We interrupt this program for an urgent development. Iran's fatal error. The U.S. Navy's swift action has ensured the point of no return.
0347 local. The Strait of Hormuz is black glass under a moonless sky, and somewhere inside that dark corridor, a Nimitz-class carrier strike group is already turning into the wind. 40 miles north, on the Iranian coast, a mobile launcher rolls out of a reinforced shelter and stops. The clock starts now. Nobody on the American flagship knows it yet. But the next 11 minutes will decide whether a regional standoff becomes the shortest naval war in modern history. The launcher is a Khalij Fars derivative, anti-ship ballistic, terminal guided, designed for one job and one job only: kill a flat deck. Behind it, 3 more launchers are already uncapping. Behind them, a swarm of fast attack craft slips out of Bandar Abbas at 38 knots, hugging the Iranian shoreline where the radar return blurs into the cliffs. And 40 miles south, the carrier's air wing is still cycling Super Hornets back from a routine patrol. Fuel lines hot. Ordnance carts moving across the deck. Vulnerable. Distracted. Loud. This is the window Tehran has been studying for 2 decades. The exact 90-second gap between recovery operations and full battle stations. The moment when a strike group is at its loudest and its most blind. And tonight, somebody decided to use it. The first warning doesn't come from the carrier. It comes from a Burke-class destroyer 12 miles forward of the formation, riding shotgun on the eastern flank. Her Spy-6 radar paints a launch plume rising fast off the coast. Not 1. 4, climbing through 20,000 feet on ballistic profiles, arcing southwest, and the geometry is already ugly. The intercept window is small. The target set is obvious. The destroyer's combat information center goes from quiet hum to controlled chaos in under 3 seconds. This is where most people get the story wrong. They picture a carrier as a fortress. It isn't. A carrier is a city that floats, and the destroyers around it are the walls. Tonight, those walls have 90 seconds to do the math. Track, classify, engage. In that order, in that time, against 4 inbound bricks of steel descending at Mach 5. The Aegis system priority sorts in milliseconds. 2 missiles are pure ballistic. 2 are maneuvering in the midcourse, which means terminal seekers, which means they are looking for the carrier specifically. Standard missile 6 cells unlock. The vertical launch system coughs 4 times in 11 seconds, and the night sky over the destroyer turns white. Each SM-6 is $1 million interceptor. Each one is chasing a missile that cost Iran maybe 1/10 of that. The cost exchange is brutal, and it is the cheapest part of what's about to happen. 2 intercepts in the upper atmosphere. Clean, 2 misses. The remaining pair drops into the terminal phase, and now they are no longer the destroyer's problem, they are the carrier's problem. And the carrier has roughly 40 seconds. On the flight deck, the air boss has already heard the call. Brace, 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 the cyclic recovery freezes. A Super Hornet on final waves off, banks hard right, throttles up into a holding pattern. Below decks, watertight doors are slamming on a schedule that exists for exactly this scenario. The carrier's own RIM 162 evolved Sea Sparrow cells fire in a ripple. Close-in weapon systems spin up. The phalanx mounts swing onto bearing. The whole ship transforms from an airport into a porcupine in under 20 seconds. One of the inbound missiles is hit by an SM at 4 miles. It disintegrates into a cone of burning debris that scatters across the wavetops. The other one keeps coming. This is the moment that doctrine becomes physics. The last missile is in its terminal dive, descending steeply, seeker active. The phalanx opens up at 1,000 yards. 20mm rounds at 4,500 a minute. A wall of tungsten. The missile breaks up 200 meters short of the bow. Pieces of it skip across the water like flat stones and hammer the carrier's forward sponson with enough kinetic energy to crater the armor, but not enough to penetrate. 3 sailors on a damage control team are knocked off their feet. None killed. The flight deck is intact. The reactor is intact. The strike group is intact. But the launchers on the Iranian coast are still there, and now the Americans have the bearings. This is where the script flips. Up until this moment, the United States Navy has been on defense. 40 seconds from now, it will be on offense. And it will not be a fair fight. A flight of 4 FA-18 Super Hornets, already airborne for the patrol cycle, gets vectored north, each one carrying AG-84 harpoons and AG-154 standoff munitions. Above them, a single E-2D Hawkeye, the strike group's flying brain, has been quietly building a target picture for the last 6 minutes. Every launcher position, every fast attack craft wake, every emitter that lit up the moment the salvo flew. The Hawkeye doesn't shoot, it sees. And what it sees, it shares. On a data link that puts the same picture inside every cockpit, every SIC, every weapons console across 2,000 square miles of sea. 40 miles south of the carrier, a Virginia-class submarine that nobody in Iran knew was there comes shallow. Her vertical launch tubes open. Tomahawks, Q. This is the part the Iranian planners did not model correctly. They assumed the response would come from the carrier. It does, but it also comes from below the water, from the air, from the destroyers, from satellites overhead, from a B-1B that has been loitering 800 miles away for exactly this contingency. The strike package was already written. It has been written for 15 years. Tonight is simply the night it executes. The first Tomahawks leave the submarine at 0401. Low, fast, hugging the Gulf surface, turning inland over the Iranian coast on pre-mapped corridors that thread between known air defense sites. There are 48 of them. They are not aimed at the launchers. The launchers are already being handled by the Super Hornets. The Tomahawks are aimed at command bunkers, at radar nodes, at the coastal artillery that would interdict the second wave, at the runway threshold of 2 air bases that house Iran's anti-ship capable Su-24 fleet. The logic is simple and old. You don't kill the gun. You kill the man who pulls the trigger, then you kill the place he sleeps, then you kill the road he drives on. At 0403, the Super Hornets release harpoons at the fast attack craft swarm. Sea-skimming missiles, terminal active radar, designed in the 70s. Still lethal in the 20s. 8 craft are hit in the first volley. 3 more turn back toward Bandar Abbas at full throttle and run into a second flight of Hornets coming in from the west. None of them make it home. The Khalid Fars launchers on the coast last another 4 minutes. Standoff munitions from 40 miles out, GPS and inertial guidance, descending out of the dark on coordinates that were locked the instant the missiles flew. The launchers are destroyed in their revetments before the crews can finish reloading. The reinforced shelters they came from are penetrated by bunker-busting variants that arrive seconds later. Whatever was inside those shelters, whether more missiles, more crews, more command staff, becomes part of the geology. This is the part of the engagement that doesn't make the news cycle. It happens in the dark. It happens at the speed of data. And it happens because every node in the American kill chain was already pointed at this exact coastline, with this exact target list, weeks before the first launcher rolled out. Pause on that for a moment. Because this is the reframe. The Iranian salvo was not the opening move. It was the trigger move. The Americans were not surprised. They were waiting. The carrier strike group's position, 11 minutes south of the Iranian launch sites, was not a coincidence. It was bait, deliberately set inside the kinematic envelope of the Khalid Fars, because the Pentagon wanted to know exactly which launchers Tehran would use first, exactly which doctrine they would follow, exactly which command nodes would light up the radio spectrum the instant the order was given. The carrier was the lure. The salvo was the confirmation. And the response was a strike package that had been rehearsed in classified war games for the better part of a decade. When you understand that, the math of the night changes completely. Iran spent roughly $4 million putting 4 anti-ship ballistic missiles in the air. The United States spent roughly $40 million intercepting most of them. That looks like a losing exchange. It isn't. Because what Iran also spent, in the 11 minutes between launch and counterstrike, was the operational existence of its most survivable coastal anti-ship capability 2 regional command bunkers, an entire fast attack squadron, the runway availability of 2 air bases, and the strategic credibility of the doctrine that said the Strait of Hormuz could be closed at will. All of that, gone, in the time it takes to brew a pot of coffee. The carrier never left station. By 0430, the recovery cycle had resumed. A single Super Hornet caught the 3-wire at 0431. The crew that hooked it didn't know yet that the war had started and ended on their flight deck. And this is where it stops being a tactical engagement and starts being a strategic verdict. The Strait of Hormuz carries roughly 20% of the world's oil. Iran has spent 40 years building the capability to close that strait, and the doctrine around it, and the political theater around it, and the deterrent value of the threat itself. That deterrent value is the asset. The missiles are just hardware. The asset is the belief, in every capital that imports oil, that Tehran can shut the tap if pushed hard enough. Tonight, that belief is no longer credible. Not because the missiles were intercepted. Missiles can be replaced. Belief cannot. Belief is killed by demonstration. And tonight was a demonstration. The fast attack craft fleet that was supposed to swarm a carrier is at the bottom of the Gulf. The mobile launchers that were supposed to be unfindable were found, fixed, and finished inside one tactical cycle. The command bunkers that were supposed to coordinate the second wave are radioactive concrete. The air bases that were supposed to search the Su-24s for a follow-on strike have craters where their runway thresholds used to be. The submarines that were supposed to lurk in the shallows are being hunted right now by P-8 Poseidons that took off from Bahrain 40 minutes ago. The Strait of Hormuz is open. It will stay open. And every government that was watching this play out, in Beijing, in Moscow, in Riyadh, in Tel Aviv, just received the same memo. The American Carrier Strike Group is not a target. It is a sensor. The sensor sees you launch. The launch is your last act as a meaningful military actor in this theater. The response is not proportional. It is not retaliatory. It is structural. It removes your capability to do this again. That is the verdict tonight delivers. A Burke-class destroyer with Spy-6 can track and engage threats that did not exist as engineering possibilities 10 years ago. An E-2D Hawkeye can build a fused target picture across a battlespace the size of Western Europe. A Virginia-class submarine can put 48 cruise missiles inside coastal targets while remaining undetected within 20 miles of the launch sites. A Super Hornet can prosecute surface targets at standoff range with weapons that cost less than the trucks they destroy. And every one of these platforms talks to every other one of these platforms in real time, on a data backbone that has been engineered, tested, and rehearsed for exactly the kind of night this night turned out to be. You do not need to like American foreign policy to understand the engineering. The engineering is the point. The engineering is what made the 11 minutes between launch and counterstrike feel, from inside the American kill chain, like an executed script, and from inside the Iranian launch site, like the floor giving way. By sunrise, the casualty accounting is grim on one side and minor on the other. American losses: 3 sailors injured on the carrier's forward sponson. 1 Super Hornet diverted with a fuel state issue. 1 phalanx mount needing barrel replacement. Iranian losses: estimated 400 personnel across the coastal launcher sites, fast attack craft crews, and command bunker staff. Material losses on the Iranian side include the 4 launchers, 11 fast attack craft, 2 air bases temporarily out of service, 2 destroyed command bunkers, and an entire generation of anti-ship doctrine. That last item is the one that will be studied for years. Because the doctrine assumed asymmetry. It assumed that cheap missiles fired in saturation could overwhelm expensive defenses. It assumed that the carrier was the target. It assumed that the response would be slow, political, and visible. Every one of those assumptions failed tonight. The defenses were not overwhelmed. The carrier was not the target, it was the tripwire. The response was not slow, it was simultaneous. It was not political, it was operational. And it was not visible. until it was already finished. Iran did not lose a battle tonight. Iran lost a category of warfare it had spent 4 decades building. And the US Navy made sure of it. This is the pattern you will see again, in every scenario, in every breakdown, in every reconstruction we run through this stream. Different geometry, different platforms, different launchers, different coastlines. But the same underlying logic. The same kill chain. The same 11-minute window. The same verdict at sunrise. Because the deeper truth of modern naval warfare is not about ships. It is about networks. The side that can see, decide, and shoot faster than the other side can complete a single launch cycle wins, not eventually. Immediately, and tonight, in the Strait of Hormuz, the network that won was the one that had been quietly tightening around the Iranian coast for the better part of a decade. The mobile launchers thought they were hidden. They weren't. The fast attack craft thought they were fast. They weren't. The command bunkers thought they were hardened. They weren't. The doctrine thought it was clever. It wasn't. Every one of those assumptions was a thread, and every thread was being pulled at the same time. From the air, from the sea, from below the sea, from space, from 1,000 miles inland, until the whole fabric came apart in 11 minutes. That is the engagement. That is the sequence. That is the lesson. Stay with us, because the next scenario in tonight's stream is a different theater, a different escalation, a different mistake. But the verdict will rhyme. It always does. When a regional power decides to test the edge of the American naval envelope, the envelope does not stretch. It snaps shut. And what is inside the snap, every time, is the end of somebody's doctrine. If you want to understand how each of these systems actually works in combat, stay locked into this stream. Every breakdown tonight shows a different angle of the same machine. A different launcher, a different ocean, a different last mistake. And the same Navy making sure it stays the last one. If you think the 11-minute window we just walked through is the most decisive interval in modern naval warfare, comment below. Tell us which scenario you want reconstructed next. The Persian Gulf, the Bab el-Mandeb, the Taiwan Strait, the Northern Atlantic. Every one of them has its own version of tonight. Every one of them ends the same way, for the same reason. Subscribe now if you want the next breakdown the moment it goes live, because the next time a launcher rolls out of a reinforced shelter on a moonless night, somewhere in the world, the sequence we just walked through will run again. The clock will start. The carrier will turn into the wind. The destroyers will paint the plumes. The submarine will come shallow. The Hawkeye will see everything. And 11 minutes later, somebody will be filing a casualty report while somebody else is filing a flight recovery report. That is the verdict modern naval warfare delivers. Quietly, precisely, and always on schedule. Stay with us. The next mistake is already in motion.